Okay, the purpose of this video is to show you how to make clay flowers that you may or may not choose to add to your sugar skull pinch pot. So I want everyone to start with a ball of clay. Nice soft clay usually does make it a little bit easier. So you might choose to dig down deep into some of the bags and grab a nice, maybe sort of golf ball size of soft clay. Now the first thing you're going to want to do is just pull off a small chunk. Now I like to use the technique where I'm just using my thumb and my forefingers to start to thin out that chunk that you pulled off. If you want your flower to be a little bit more realistic looking and have really rough edges, then when you're squeezing it out, you avoid those edges. You want to keep that quality of the edge really rough. This is going to make those petals look a little bit more realistic because rose petals actually have kind of a rough edge to them. If you want the rose to be really refined and smoothed out, then you are going to want to smooth out those edges like that so that you have a nice clean edging. It's totally up to you. For this technique, I'll just do a nice smooth edge. And it doesn't really matter what shape it is or what it looks like. You're just creating a little thin pancake. And the first leaf that you're going to do is going to end up being the center of your flower. So what you're going to do is using your thumb and your forefingers, you're going to roll it kind of like a taco. I like to think of it like a rolled taco. And you're going to see how you are going to get a little spiral. And then you're just going to pinch it where it all comes together. Okay, so you have this kind of rolled taco. And the cool thing is that you're able to kind of open up those petals a little bit and create just the start of like a little tulip shape. So you can put that on its side, and now you're going to do the same thing. You're going to pull off a piece of clay and just start to flatten it out. Now these pieces do not need to be the same size or shape. In fact, sometimes it looks good to have some variation, but you can see here how at the edge I'm kind of smoothing it out. And now what you're going to want to do is pick back up your flower and rotate it around a little bit. And you're going to just lay that new petal right around the edge and wrap it around. You're going to wrap it and then squeeze the base. So you could see how I'm squeezing the base. So I have this long kind of base here that later I'm going to cut off. But again, you'll have access to those leaves that you can kind of open up and play with until you're liking the shape. Now you're going to repeat this process over and over and over again until you're getting the size and shape flower that you are going for. Again, you're going to rotate it and wrap it and squeeze it. Again, you're just going to keep kind of adding to this base here, and ultimately we're going to cut that off in a minute here. So I added another petal, same thing, sort of squeeze it out. Rotate and wrap and squeeze, open it up, and you could see how we're starting to get the shape of a rose. I'll do one more leaf, or excuse me, petal. And you can see even a little bit of water, getting your fingers wet and softening up those edges can really help. And I'll do one more around here. And let's say I'm really liking the look of that flower. And you could take a wet paintbrush and kind of clean up all of these petals, soften them up, clean up any kind of cracks or issues, or even kind of mess with those petals to kind of frill them out. It's totally up to you what you want it to look like once you have your flower together. Now, if you turn it on the side, you could see that because I was just adding petals and squeezing it as we go, we have this really bizarre long kind of stem here, which is great for building, not super great for attaching. You could see if I tried to attach this, it would look really goofy and chunky, right? Well, we're going to want to trim the base of the flower. So you could see here that I've got the base all blended together, and if I did a good job squeezing it every time I was adding a petal, all this base is nice and flat for me to work with. So when you put it on its side, you could take a fettling knife and determine just how high up you want the flower to go. Now think about it, when you're attaching it to your skull, you don't want the flower to sit up super duper high. It just looks really awkward. So kind of keep that in mind. I'm going to show you a trick for eating up some of that height, but you could see I just trimmed this big long stem off, and here I have the base of my flower. So I always like to just make sure it's all blended together on the base. And you could even kind of open up some of those petals so it's not super tall. Now, if I liked how it looked and I wanted to attach it to my skull, I would just go through that slip and score method. Anytime you want to attach two pieces of clay together, and I would scratch up the base of the flower. And let's say I wanted it over one of its ears. I would scratch up where I wanted to attach it. I would add a little bit of slip. And then I would simply press it on. Now you can kind of see that the flower kind of sticks up a little high and looks a little goofy. Now you could leave it like that if you like, or you can now open up some of those petals again and kind of clean up that shape. One really cool trick that I like to do as well is add petals onto the surface. And the way that you're going to do that is you're going to create another petal the same way that you created it for your flower, and then you're going to roll it under itself. So you've got your petal. Now, if you see that I'm kind of turning it into a taco shape, you can see it's just like a little taco shape. And by putting it right on the surface of your skull, but pressing it in to the base of that petal, and as long as I blend out the bottom of that petal, I could open up this leaf and eat up some of that height so it doesn't look as bizarre looking. And you could kind of see how then you can make it look a little bit less tall. You could do the same thing if you wanted to create a little leaf. Leaves are pretty easy. You just create a little shape that you use your thumb and your forefinger. You can see how if I go over and over and over again, you can sort of pinch it at the tip and start to create that leaf shape. Now, similarly to that last petal, if I roll the back around, creating a little ledge, I would be able right on the surface of my pinch pot to kind of get a leaf in there. You can see how I just have it right on the bottom. And because I created that little base, I can blend down that leaf so it's nice and attached. And then I can have fun kind of changing its shape. I can kind of twist it around. I could flatten it out. I could do all kinds of fun things with that leaf because I was able to blend it right on the surface of my sugar skull. So that is a great way that if you wanted to create a flower for your sugar skull, you would be able to do that. Here is an example of a student who made 3 flowers and a little leaf and put them next to each other up on their sugar skull. So have some fun playing with it. Hopefully by now you've gotten a chance to try out the technique. And again, you could go back in once these firm up a little bit and use this wet paintbrush, clean them up. You could even go in with some carving tools and kind of carve some of those back out or add a little bit more dimension and have some fun playing with it for your sugar skull. Thank you so much.